Hi, and thank you for joining us. I'm Elizabeth Burden, your host for AZ Illustrated Arts. Tonight, meet painter Peter Young, who is still transforming his art after more than 4 decades. Learn about an annual event in Tucson that connects a Renaissance poem to contemporary faith. Explore the work of Lola Alvarez Bravo, one of Mexico's most important photographers. And find out how photographer Breaky looks into the secret nocturnal world of the desert. But first, today's top stories.
The February unemployment rate in Arizona is down 0.1% compared to January. The Arizona Department of Administration is reporting today the February unemployment rate was 7.9%. The national rate for last month was 7.7%, also down from January. The largest increase in jobs was in the government sector, specifically in public education. Those jobs account for more than half of the nearly 23,000 jobs added to the state economy in February. The only sector which lost jobs last month in Arizona was the trade, transportation, and utilities sector. The mining industry didn't add or eliminate jobs last month. A new report released today by University of Arizona researchers finds half of people deported to Mexico have family members or children who are U.S. citizens. Authors of the report say the study points out what officials in Washington should focus on as they propose immigration reform.
Priority 1 is increase the number of family visas and decrease the wait times. And number 2 has to be take a really hard critical examination of these enforcement programs. They're extremely expensive, they're ineffective. So we would really recommend ending those type of programs and reconceiving what it is to secure the border.
The report finds that most deportees spend an average of 7 years living and working in the U.S., and 70% of them say they will cross the border again in the future. The report also says the current detention and deportation system is not enough to deter immigrants from returning to the U.S. illegally. Congressman Ron Barber is asking the Secretary of Homeland Security to prevent budget cuts to Border Patrol. Barber sent a letter to Secretary Janet Napolitano this week saying the cuts, known as sequestration, will reduce Border Patrol agents' pay by up to 40%. In the letter, Barber says there is enough funding to continue paying the agents at their normal salary because Congress recently passed a budget deal. He writes that border security is a national priority. And that's a look at today's news.
The 1960s New York art scene spawned many influential movements that still resonate to this day. One artist who emerged during that significant era is painter Peter Young. A retrospective of his work is on view through March 31st at the Museum of Contemporary Art in Tucson. Weise Cohon toured the show with the artist as his guide.
Capitalist Masterpieces is the title of Peter Young's retrospective at MOCA. The work is diverse, but when you walk into the main gallery, it's clear that all these paintings emanated from the single creative vision of one individual.
I've tried to change and change and change.
Peter Young is known for his abstract paintings that have been widely exhibited in the U.S. and in Europe since the 1960s. Although he now lives in Bisbee, Arizona, his legacy began as an important contributor to the New York art scene of the 60s.
This painting here was 1966.
He says one particular large painting included in this exhibition represents his early attempts to find a foothold as a minimalist artist.
I had a whole studio filled with these sky blue paintings with taped lines, and some of them had stenciled numbers even. And the curator, Lawrence Alloway, was curating the first minimal show for the Guggenheim Museum. He came to my studio. He looked at this studio full of minimal work and went home, and then he didn't put me in the show. So I'm figuring, okay, I'm not going to be a minimalist. The boat has left, and I'm not on it.
Young may have missed the minimalist boat that day.
Although I think all of my work is informed by minimalism.
But he eventually secured a boarding pass, and his work went on to show at the Whitney Museum of American Art, the Guggenheim Museum, and the Leo Castelli Gallery, among several other important venues. The paintings in Young's retrospective are characterized by his explorations of patterns, geometric shapes, grids, and dots.
This is a very important painting for me because it's 1967, and the painting was actually the first painting where the dots began to flow in a way that wasn't based on a grid.
Young says his paintings rarely have titles, but each numbered work provides a clue to his evolving focus and his changing methodologies. The dots and circles in one part of the gallery soon lead to the repetitive grid patterns that appear to shimmer and vibrate off the canvas.
I call these woven paintings. They're not really weavings, but in a sense I'm weaving with paint. And this is a painting from the late 70s. It's again one of my discoveries, I guess. I discovered that I could weave with paint.
These woven paintings hint at Young's varied interests. He says his work is not topical, but rather self-referential, and he says he likes to play as he explores new techniques. The textile-like woven paintings seem like just another logical phase in the Young continuum of styles.
I began to think, what would happen if I start folding them in different directions?
An exploration like this of what can happen when the canvas is manipulated and folded.
So I made some experiments and came up with the fact that if I folded on a horizontal, a vertical, and one diagonal, I would get 8-fold symmetry. And that like forms a perfect mandala.
Young's artistic identity was born out of the well-defined and often celebrated era of the 60s and 70s. But ironically, that same identity is what has motivated him to constantly seek change, a sort of self-referential need to redefine the work that keeps him alive.
I didn't want to get stuck having to make the same painting for 40 years. And I've been able to accomplish that at the expense of having a recognizable style.
Young says he's still exploring new styles and techniques and continues to paint on a regular basis in his studio in Bisbee.
Tonight, St. Philip's in the Hills Episcopal Church will host a special all-night reading of a poem. The author is best known by just his first name, Dante, and the poem, known as the Inferno, was composed in Italy in the 14th century. My next guest will explain why reading the Inferno has now become an annual tradition. The Reverend Greg Foraker is assistant to the rector at St. Philip's in the Hills Episcopal Church, and Fabian Alfie is a professor of Italian at the University of Arizona. Thank you both for joining me.
Thank you.
So tell us, whose idea was this and how did the event come about?
I guess it began 5 years ago. We were inspired by a similar project that was happening at the Cathedral of St. John the Divine in New York City, where they did a shorter reading of Dante's Inferno on this very night, Maundy Thursday. And we said, can we stretch this out and offer more of the Inferno and actually turn this into an all-night experience?
Why all night?
Well, this is the tradition of the church that on Maundy Thursday, it's long been for centuries the tradition to keep watch through the night, remembering the journey of Jesus in those last days of his life of staying up all night in the Garden of Gethsemane. And so the tradition for Christians is to stay awake, watch, and keep in prayer through the night, remembering the path that Jesus took.
So how does this reading tie into Dante's intent of writing this epic poem, do you think?
Well, there definitely are traditions, or I should say, there definitely are references to the fact that Dante's work was recited orally. We have a number of stories in the 14th century of people reciting it, and a lot of them are actually very humorous because they're reciting it wrong and Dante hears them and then he gets mad at them. But we also know, for instance, that it's circulated, for instance, by people performing it, maybe in the piazzas or something else, so that while people were reading it, they were also hearing it. And that's a very important point. And if I can throw in a more personal note, my mother was born in Florence in 1932. I suppose I probably shouldn't have mentioned how old she is. And she was in a working class neighborhood, and on her street there was a man who would repair shoes, and he would hammer and keep time by reciting from memory Dante's poem in Italian.
Give us a synopsis of the origin and the plot of Dante's Inferno for those of us who may not have read it recently.
Well, it's important that the reading take place on Maundy Thursday because the entire journey, the Divine Comedy is a journey through the afterlife, and it starts pre-dawn on Good Friday. So with this all-night reading, we're just pushing the time frame forward by about maybe 6 hours or something. And Dante goes through hell, and then if you read the entire Divine Comedy, he then goes through purgatory and paradise. Hell is a cone that goes into the center of the earth, and the sins, as you go down, each get progressively worse. There's a lack of self-control, which would be lust, gluttony, greed at the top level, because it's really about just not having, as I said, self-control. Then you get into malice, fraud, and finally, at the very bottom is treason.
So what happens during this all-night reading? How is it structured, Reverend?
It's structured in 26 segments through the night. It begins at 9 o'clock in the evening tonight and goes until 10 o'clock tomorrow morning on Good Friday. And in half-hour segments, we begin each segment tolling the bells. Then there's a period of silence. A musician will offer a musical meditation for a few minutes. And then one of the readers will come out of the darkness and read the canto appointed for that segment. Then there's about 10 minutes of silence to sit, reflect, and meditate in the quiet of the church.
What value do you think this text has for contemporary life?
It seems that there's this great opportunity with this text to both hear the historical perspective, but also realize that the issues that were happening in Dante's day, we have our own versions of that today, and it makes us look at our own lives, our own communities, and how we contribute to the common good.
So, what do you think, Professor? Same question. What value does it have for us in contemporary life?
Well, there are many updatings of the Divine Comedy, especially of the Inferno portion. There are film versions. There was a recent video game. People are putting it into artwork. And it clearly has resonance. One example I like to use, and it's an unfortunate example, is the 20th century had a number of hells on earth. And so we can sort of see that there is evil in the world, and so we want to try to make sense of it. The journey through hell isn't just a journey to get through, it's about understanding, really coming to grips with what is evil. Mm-hmm. And so I think that still has resonance, even though the terms that Dante used, he wrote things 700 years ago, so we may not necessarily agree with his categories, but that's not really the point. But that notion that there is still evil and we have to come to grips with it.
So in the last 30 seconds that we have, what do you think participants find most meaningful?
I think the ability to enter into the deepest mysteries in the church at a time in the church year leading into Easter that's so profound, and to have this great literary work be the vehicle that invites deep reflection is just a privileged opportunity, and so people love to come out and be part of it during the night.
Well, I want to thank you both for taking the time to join us to talk a little bit more about that and let everyone know that they can participate. It's open to the public, correct? And
all are welcome throughout the night.
All right. Thank you both so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
President Obama renewed his call for stricter gun laws today, saying shame on us if we've forgotten the tragedies at Newtown and elsewhere.
We update the lobbying efforts on both sides of the gun issue and talk with reporters in Connecticut and Arizona about the investigations into shootings there.
Then we turn to same-sex marriage. After 2 days in the spotlight at the Supreme Court, we get perspective from religious leaders.
Public media reporter Kathy Lewis examines the very real impact of across-the-board federal spending cuts on a southeastern Virginia community that relies heavily on the military.
And we close with 2 stories on child development. How do you prevent bullying? A program in Seattle is having success using babies.
Then we talk to The Atlantic's Hannah Rosen about toddlers and young children choosing smartphones and tablets over rattles and teddy bears.
That's all ahead on tonight's NewsHour.
New Jersey is no California, but there's one winemaker who would love to change that.
This is fantastic. You like that one? Not bad for New Jersey, right?
I'm David Green, wine tasting in the Garden State on the next Morning Edition from NPR News.
Opening March 30th at the Center for Creative Photography, Lola Alvarez Bravo and the Photography of an Era features both iconic and lesser-known images created by one of Mexico's most important photographers who was fascinated with documenting scenes of everyday life. Here to discuss the development of the exhibition and the ways in which it explores Bravo's rich contributions to modern art is independent curator and art historian Rachael Arauz. She specializes in American modern art and the history of photography. Rachael, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
So how did Lola Alvarez Bravo begin her photography work?
Well, she has a very long career. She's born in 1903, she dies in 1993, so her career really her lifetime spans the 20th century. But she's first introduced to photography as a young bride married to Manuel Alvarez Bravo, who becomes one of Mexico's greatest 20th century photographers. They're in the darkroom together. She's interested in his cameras and taking photographs with him. And their marriage ends in the 30s, but she continues to have a long, rich and complicated career into the 1980s.
How did this exhibition come about?
This exhibition came about originally with the discovery of a lost archive or an unknown archive of Lola's work that was found and cared for in an apartment that Lola had moved out of at the very end of her life. Boxes were abandoned and overlooked in the process of moving, and the family that came into inheritance of the apartment found them and realized they were something important and cared for them. They brought the work to the attention of museums in Mexico, and we originally organized a show, a small selection of this archive, for the Diego Rivera Studio Museum in Mexico City.
Let's look at a few of the photographs and talk a little bit about why she's such an important photographer. Let's start with this image called El Número. What can you tell us about that?
This work is number 17, and one of the important things to realize at the CCP, what visitors will see is a selection from the CCP's archive, which was established just before Lola passed away, as well as the work from this archive from Mexico City. So this work is a really wonderful inclusion in the exhibition. We actually have 3 different versions of this photograph in the exhibition. One belongs to the CCP, and 2 others were found in the Rendon archive, the Gonzalez Rendon archive. It's been published with a date of 1958, but the Gonzalez Rendon archive discovery allowed us to date it to 1943, which is a big difference across the span of the 20th century. We know it's 1943 because it has a label indicating that Lola sent it to an exhibition in Philadelphia at the Philadelphia Museum of Art in 1943. The print she sent for exhibition in 1943 is cropped slightly differently. It's a darker print. The CCP's print is very bright and the figures are very visible. In the 1943 print, it's very dark and mysterious and carries a different title called The Lost Hours, which gives it a very poetic and mysterious meaning.
Talk a little bit about this next image, which is entitled Telas, circa 1950.
Telas is another wonderful comparison. What we've done with the exhibition here at the CCP, because we've got 2 different archives, we're juxtaposing works from Rendon and works from the CCP. And in the case of Telas, again, this image is a well-known published image by Lola out of the Center for Creative Photography's archive, but the Rendon archive had a different version. Lola has stepped back from the scene with her camera and given us more context. So the CCP's version is this beautiful modernist meditation on light and shadows and angles and forms, but when she steps back, the other version tells us that are these cloths drying in the sun? Is this, just shade created by a part of the town? It tells us something different, and with this comparison, we see Lola moving back and forth between photographing daily life in Mexico, which she's known for, and also with the same camera on the same day, within the same few minutes, creating really beautiful, iconic, modernist compositions.
So what role do you think the 2 archives play in understanding her practice in terms of the modernist and connecting the photojournalism and the commercial photography and the like?
Well, the CCP's archive has long been known. It was established just before Lola passed away, and scholars have had wonderful access to it at the University of Arizona. This new body of material is quite substantial and messy and unedited, and when we think of archives, there's the possibility of a really organized, tidy version that somebody might create, but there's also the possibility that most of us have in our house, the messy piles of things that are left behind. And we really have the chance to see two different versions. The Center for Creative Photography's archive perhaps represents Lola's own very carefully edited vision of what her career meant to her, the beautiful images across her career that were important for her. And we have a lot of overlap between the two archives, but the Gonzalez-Rendon archive also gives us a messier, unedited version. There are also many photographs by her husband Manuel, and also a body of photographs by people who seem to have been her students. And all of this, it tells us something about what was meaningful to Lola, that she held on to these things, not just her own work, but also work by other people who were important to her.
Well, Rachel, I want to thank you so much for joining us and sharing Lola Alvarez Bravo's work.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
Through April 2nd, the Temple Gallery is showing the work of photographer and painter Kate Breaky. Called Creatures of Light and Darkness, it features dream-like images of the secluded lives of desert animals. Next, Luis Carrion finds out how the artist manages to achieve such an unusual collaboration.
You never get to see anything that close when it's alive. And here, because we're spying on them, we're seeing them kind of going about their daily lives. All my work is about the natural world, and that I come from rural country town Australia, and I've always been interested in the natural world. And as an artist, that's pretty much all I make art about. My name is Kate Breaky, and I'm an artist, I'm a photographer. I actually hand colour photographs. That's what I've been doing for the last 30 years or so. I'm sort of a painter photographer, if you like. As a photographer, I actually didn't make these photographs. They sort of made themselves. They were made with what's called a wildlife camera, which I actually have here. I like to say, I call it the spy camera because basically we are spying on, you know, the creatures that we live with, but don't actually ever get to see this close up. And some of them are aware of the camera, and in fact they're looking at the camera because this camera actually is motion sensing and makes a tiny sound when it's taking a picture, and often it's enough of a sound that attracts their attention, and they actually walk up to it, they walk towards it. And sometimes they knock it off the rock. Sometimes the bobcats urinate on it to mark their territory. But it's quite amazing that you get animals that actually are looking right at the camera and sometimes walking towards them. These are printed digitally, obviously, on a nice archival watercoloured paper, pigmented ink paper. They're mounted to make them flat, and then I just go back in with pencil and paint, really just to push them out of being documentary photographs and into being sort of paintings or drawings, I guess, which is what I've been doing for so long I can't help myself. The desert is so much about listening to it because all the howling and the singing and the screaming and it's just amazing. You realize just how much is out there that you don't see. And as I said, the desert comes to life at night. Obviously, I'd like to have been there when the pictures were taken, but the fact that the animals are taking their own pictures is kind of quite a nice idea.
Now, here's an excerpt from the second canto of Dante's epic poem, The Inferno, as read by Wendy Weise Cohon. Wendy is one of the readers in the gathering tonight at St. Philip's Episcopal Church. This section of the poem concerns Dante's doubts that he is strong enough to make his journey. He receives counsel from some feminine spirits.
Because you want to fathom things so deeply, I now shall tell you promptly, she replied, why I am not afraid to enter here. One ought to be afraid of nothing other, than things possessed of power to do us harm. But things innocuous need not be feared. God in his graciousness has made me so that this your misery cannot touch me. I can withstand the fires flaming here. In heaven, there's a gentle lady, one who weeps for the distress toward which I send you, so that stern judgment up above is shattered. And it was she who called upon Lucia, requesting of her, now your faithful one has need of you, and I commend him to you. Lucia, enemy of every cruelty, arose and made her way to where I was, sitting beside the venerable Rachael. She said, you, Beatrice, true praise of God, why have you not helped him who loves you so, that for your sake he's left the vulgar crowd? Do you not hear the anguish in his cry? Do you not see the death he wars against upon that river, ruthless as the sea? No one within this world has ever been so quick to seek his good or flee his harm as I, when she had finished speaking thus, to come below, down from my blessed station. I trusted in your honest utterance, which honors you and those who've listened to you. When she had finished with her words to me, she turned aside her gleaming, tearful eyes, which only made me hurry all the more. And just as she had wished, I came to you. I snatched you from the path of the fierce beast that barred the shortest way up the fair mountain. What is it then? Why? Why do you resist? Why does your heart host so much cowardice? Where are your daring and your openness? As long as there are 3 such blessed women concerned for you within the court of heaven, and my words promise you so great a good. As little flowers, with the chill of night has bent and huddled, when white sun strikes grow straight and open fully on their stems, so did I too with my exhausted force. And such warm daring rushed into my heart that I, as one who had been free, began, "Oh, she compassionate, who has helped me, and you, who courteous obeyed so quickly the true words that she had addressed to you. You with your words have so disposed my heart to longing for this journey. I return to what I was first prepared to do. Now go. A single will fills both of us. You are my guide, my governor, my master." These were my words to him. When he advanced, I entered on the steep and savage path.
That's our show. To post a comment on any of these stories or to keep up with the latest news, visit our website, azpm.org. I'm Elizabeth Burden. Thank you for watching.